Speaker.
I call Marama Davidson. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe e te māngai o te whare, huri noa ki oku hoa kaimahi, tēnā tātou katoa. Madam Chair, I rise with pleasure to support the Christchurch Cathedral Reinstatement Bill. I welcomed the opportunity as a member coming into this particular issue quite cold, to be honest, and also as a non-Cantabrian, a non-Christchurch resident. I really enjoyed, I have to say, the process that this particular legislation has been through to this point, which allowed me to get a clearer understanding of both the importance of this bill and what it is attempting to do to reinvigorate the community in the heart of Christchurch by reinstating the cathedral, which of course was badly damaged by the earthquakes in February 2011. And as we heard from many of the submitters and many of the local MPs to Christchurch as well, that it almost has not changed its look from the time it was actually damaged. People were quite concerned that even today, almost 7 years later, it still looks somewhat the same. It still is an eyesore in the community and has not allowed people to move on, not to move on to forget the tragedy, but to move on and acknowledge what has happened in a way that is positive, where people can see a rebuild, a re-enjoyment of what the Christchurch Cathedral has to offer, and the absolute impacts that the current broken state of the cathedral, the disrepair state of the cathedral has on the whole regeneration of Christchurch and not just its immediate surroundings. So we know that the recovery, the reinstatement of the cathedral was sort of delayed a bit by some of the stilted conversation and the stilted debate, including litigation. And so it became on us the responsibility to somehow try and restore the process alongside the cathedral itself. And that is where this bill has come from, is my understanding, to make sure that with expedience in a way that is cost effective and gives earlier and greater certainty for the community of Christchurch, that we can actually move forward and progress the rebuild. So I have enjoyed being our permanent member for the Environment Select Committee for the Green Party to sort of walk me through this process. I too welcomed the Select Committee's advice, our advice to make sure that the work of the Cathedral Working Group and their report was put front and centre into the consideration and the read of this legislation, because it is the spirit of the recommendations of that very report which this legislation balances on. And the report from the Cathedral Working Group concluded that to repair only or to restore only would not be viable engineering options, because they would not bring the cathedral, either in part or in whole, up to 100% of the seismic requirements of the new building code. And so we have this legislation to facilitate a building that also helps us to live up to those safety requirements. So, Madam Speaker, what does the bill actually do? And this is where I do appreciate the process of the Environment Select Committee, because the bill most certainly does give extraordinary powers to the minister responsible for the reinstatement work of this cathedral. And we must at all times be cautious and considered with granting extraordinary powers to any representative in this House. And so cautious and considered we have been, I believe, and someone might want to correct me if I'm wrong, but that is indicated by the fact that this may be one of the first unanimously agreed pieces of legislation in this parliamentary term so far, I think. And that is because we did absolutely take care in the granting of these extraordinary powers, bound and restricted by the checks and balances also contained in this legislation. The extraordinary powers manifest by an order in council. And an order in council is simply a way where the relevant minister will be able to perhaps put to the side, extend or add extra bits on to specific legislative requirements. Now, the reason why this is extraordinary is because on face value can seem like it's a way to step around laws that we have made, and it is. And that's the heart of why we've had to be so careful about this. But I am satisfied, which is why our Environment Select Committee report was unanimous, that we have got in place good, careful checks and balances. I do want to touch on the Select Committee process and the submissions that we heard. And I absolutely have to thank the officials who, in this truncated process, did some incredible work for us to bring to us all of the changes and all of the suggestions, and did the investigation for us on the questions that we demanded an answer to, so that we could be sure that we were granting extraordinary powers in a way that was appropriate and safe. So thank you so much to those officials. I want to mention in particular the submission from the Christchurch City Council, who in all fairness wanted to be heard that they needed to be involved from the get-go, that they want to be a close partner in developing and commenting on those extraordinary orders with the Minister. And I absolutely understand and hear that, which is why the Select Committee included into the legislation a proactive engagement with the Christchurch City Council. And, we urge, with the leadership of the Environment Select Committee, that that be one of the many relationships that must be upheld and handled well. We did absolutely add more pieces of law to the schedule. So we did agree that there were other acts that should come under the net of these extraordinary powers. So that can seem like a dangerous thing, and it should be seen like that. And so we had to again make sure that the acts were relevant and that the relevant ministers of those pieces of legislation be consulted with. So I'm happy with the way that we have added more pieces of law into the net of the Minister's extraordinary powers. I want to talk about the Select Committee making sure that reinstatement, the definition of it in the bill, includes construction, reconstruction and restoration. We wanted to capture the heart of what we mean and allow for the necessary flexibility when reinstating the cathedral. And it included, as Honourable Maggie Barry has already stated, the new materials, which could include new technologies. And so that's about understanding that there is more than one way of us getting to a place where the mana and integrity of the cathedral is upheld in the spirit that the Cathedral Working Group have intended. So moving forward, a little bit more on the checks and balances, because that is really important. The Minister's reasons for making an order for these extraordinary powers have to be published. And again, the Select Committee noted that those publications be dispersed in a way that is proactive, and that relevant organisations and people, regardless of whether it's in the actual legislation, we fully recommend that those proactive approaches to those organisations are made where at all possible. The review panel absolutely must review the draft of that extraordinary order and make sure that it checks that this is okay, that this is safe and appropriate for what is intended, and that and of course the public engagement mechanism is still included in this draft. I think just to end off, Really what we want here is a balance of making sure that we can heal and assist the Christchurch community to heal the cathedral, and maintain a balance of making sure that the relationships and that the community are taken with this process and that they are never forgotten. And that was in particular one of the recommendations from the Christchurch Heritage Trust, that there is a way that we can do this that takes the community with us. And so I endorse this bill to the House. Thank you.
I call Erica Stanford.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm really happy and